This should really go without saying, but because many of us have been warped and programmed to submit to authority without question through our 15,000-hour public school indoctrination program, it may not be so obvious. But if you're sitting in a restaurant or at a gas station or somewhere with your friends or family, or you're alone, and somebody starts harassing you, putting their hands on you, or attacking you for no reason, you have the right as a human being to liberate yourself and your loved ones from the unjust aggression of any attacker. And I mean any attacker, even if the attacker is wearing a uniform, a badge, and a gun. Contrary to what we've been taught in school, costumes and badges don't grant special rights. Now granted, because the age in which we live and the mentality people have, to take up a defensive posture against a cop has the strong potential to bring the entire police force down on your head. And even if you're in the right, you may not live through the experience. But the bottom line is that a cop is an individual just like you. You're both on an equal plane as far as rights are concerned. The problem is that they let their imagined power go to their heads, and that power is left unchecked when the rest of us submit like timid sheep and don't hold cops to the general standards of the human experience. And you guys know what I think about laws. They're nothing more than the opinions of political puppets backed by the threat of force. But even the cops' own laws testify that if they step out of line with an innocent person and become the aggressor, they can expect a pushback that is protected by the very laws that their political overlords have drafted. And that's what the rest of this video is about. To give you the case law that recognizes that the people who are not cops have every right to treat the cops the way they would treat any criminal attacker. Knowledge is power, and it's the key to liberty. But remember, you don't need a court or a politician to tell you that you have the right to defend yourself regardless of the clothing your attacker is wearing. Here's what Plummer v. State has to say. Citizens may resist unlawful arrest to the point of taking an arresting officer's life if necessary. This premise was upheld by the Supreme Court of the United States in the case of John Bad Elk. The court stated, where the officer is killed in the course of the disorder which naturally accompanies an attempted arrest that is resisted, the law looks with very different eyes upon the transaction when the officer had the right to make the arrest from what it does if the officer had no right. What may be murder in the first case might be nothing more than manslaughter in the other, or the facts might show that no offense has been committed. An arrest made with a defective warrant, or one issued without affidavit, or one that fails to allege a crime is within jurisdiction, and one who's being arrested, may resist arrest and break away. If the arresting officer is killed by the one who is so resisting, the killing will be no more than an involuntary manslaughter. And it states a bunch of cases to uphold that law. In Runyon v. State, this is written. When a person being without fault is in a place where he has a right to be, is violently assaulted, he may, without retreating, repel by force, and if, in the reasonable exercise of his right of self-defense, his assailant is killed, he is justified. But it continues. These principles apply as well to an officer attempting to make an arrest who abuses his authority and transcends the bounds thereof by the use of unnecessary force and violence as they do to a private individual who unlawfully uses such force and violence. And they appeal to many other cases for this precedent. In State v. Robinson, it says, an illegal arrest is an assault and battery. The person so attempted to be restrained of his liberty has the same right to use force in defending himself as he would in repelling any other assault and battery. Each person has the right to resist an unlawful arrest. In such a case, the person attempting the arrest stands in the position of a wrongdoer and may be resisted by the use of force as in self-defense. Adams v. State says, one may come to the aid of another being unlawfully arrested just as he may where one is being assaulted, molested, raped, or kidnapped. Thus, it is not an offense to liberate one from the unlawful custody of an officer, even though he may have submitted to such custody without resistance. And this is from Mutiny on Amistad by Howard Jones, an account of the reading of the decision in the case by Justice Joseph Story of the Supreme Court. Story affirmed the right of self-defense by persons held illegally. In his own writings, he had admitted that a situation could arise in which the checks and balances principle ceased to work and the various branches of government concurred in a gross usurpation. There would be no usual remedy by changing the law or passing an amendment to the Constitution should the oppressed party be a minority. And Story concluded, if there be any remedy at all, it is a remedy never provided by human institutions. In other words, this transcends man-made law. That was the ultimate right of all human beings in extreme cases to resist oppression and to apply force against ruinous injustice. And by the way, guys, as for the accusation of disturbing the peace simply because you're wearing a firearm, let the offending officer know this in case you're ever in this situation. In Wharton's Criminal and Civil Procedure, 12th edition, volume 2, it states, the carrying of arms in a quiet, peaceable, and orderly manner, concealed on or about the person, is not a breach of the peace, nor does such an act of itself lead to a breach of the peace. I think it's time for people to wake up and realize that when injustice becomes law, resistance becomes duty. Guys, don't forget to take a second to go to the HighImpactVlogs.com website and subscribe if you want to see more of my content. One way or another, we're going to fight censorship. Hopefully, the people at YouTube will get their heads out of their asses long enough to realize that thinking people on their platform aren't going to tolerate their tyrannical tactics for much longer. But I wouldn't hold my breath. Guys, if you like what we're doing here on this demonetized, censored channel and you want to support the effort, the Patreon, PayPal, and Bitcoin links are below. If you want to support the channel by grabbing a shirt or two, check out the new in-your-face designs like Black Rifles Matter, Escape from California, Taxation is Legalized Theft, and Sheepvolution. I'm adding new designs every week, and I do take design requests, so check back often. Thank you guys for subscribing, watching, sharing, and especially for all your kick-ass, thoughtful comments. I'll see you guys in the next heavily censored, demonetized video.
Take a ride on the wild side.